Hello, welcome to Building It. In this video, I'm going to go over the components of the bike I built for my Alaska to Argentina ride, and the reasons behind each decision. The reason I decided to build my own bike is I felt my old touring bike was on its last legs and I wanted an upgrade. I also wanted to be sure I understood the ins and outs of bike maintenance for each component, and I thought building my own bike would provide that. I never built a bike before, and there are some decisions that I'm now questioning after about 2 months on the road. The philosophy behind the design was to prioritize durability, compatibility, and comfort. I wanted something that wouldn't break on the road, and if it did, I could replace or fix it relatively easily. I didn't prioritize low-weight components because I knew I would be making videos, and so my luggage would be fairly heavy anyway. My first decision was on wheel size. I chose 26-inch wheels because I was under the impression that they are far more ubiquitous in Latin America, so finding parts and spares would be easier in the small bike shops I was likely to encounter there. Now, after hearing more accounts of people biking in the region, I'm not so sure that's true. I decided not to try to build my own wheels because it seemed too complicated, so I pretty much just went to the local bike shop in Seattle that was recommended to me, Free Range Cycles, and asked them to build me a set of wheels durable enough for an Alaska to Argentina trip. I also supplied my own Son dynamo hub for the front wheel to generate electricity for my cameras and other navigation devices. Here's what they built. The rear hub is a Hope RS4, a pretty sturdy mountain biking hub. The rims I ended up with are Velocity cliffhangers, which I understand are also pretty heavy duty. They're also tubeless ready. I haven't tried going tubeless yet, and the reason is mainly that it's new and it scares me. I can always switch to tubeless later, maybe from Mexico. Both wheels have 36 spokes. The tires are Schwalbe pickups at 2.35 inches width. I chose the pickup tires because they seem slightly more puncture resistant than the marathon tires most people go for, and in exchange are a bit heavier, which I don't really care about. They're actually designed to be e-bike tires. I have much wider tires than anyone I've met on the road so far, but they seem to roll okay on the pavement, and I'm hoping the extra width will help with the upcoming Great Divide route. The width has caused some issues already though, and I'll go over that later. I'm also running full-length SKS fenders in order to protect the drivetrain a little. The frame is a custom-made frame from Rodriguez Cycles, a small, well-respected custom bike shop in Seattle. I got their UTB model, which is the heavy-duty international steel touring frame that was sized to fit me. For the fork, I'm running a Surly Troll fork. How that happened was, before I decided to get the Rodriguez frame, I had an old 90s mountain bike I was going to build up. I got it off of Craigslist and stripped all the components off. The fork it had didn't have any braze-ons to attach a front rack to, so I went to the local used bike shop to see if they had any good steel forks. They didn't, but they offered to order me a pretty good fork, and that's how I ended up with this fork. I was actually pretty surprised when it came how many braze-ons it has. Eventually, my friend offered me a couple of cargo cages, so I decided against a front rack altogether and just went with cargo and water bottle cages in the fork. One of the most common questions I get about the bike is why rim brakes and not disc brakes. The reason is, much like the 26-inch wheels, my sense was that they are still more common outside of the US and Canada. That may not actually be true anymore. It seems like everyone is running disc brakes these days. I guess the disc brake revolution is over and I missed it. I've never used disc brakes, and much like tubeless tires, I'm hesitant to try new technology for this tour. For my gears, I'm running a triple crank in the front at 22, 30, and 40 teeth. I would have liked to go lower than 22, but I couldn't find a crank that low with a guard. I don't know why all cranks don't come with a guard. They're incredibly useful in keeping your pant cuffs from getting shredded, and yet it was hard to search for them online. I guess they're just not stylish? The Cassette has 9 speeds, from 11 to 34, which seem pretty common and allows me to use standard width chains. It might have been a good idea to get even lower gears, but I would have needed a special rear derailleur to accommodate any more gear range. The rear derailleur is a Shimano Alivo. Not the top-end Dior model, but I read an article online that said that Alivo was good enough. The rack is a Surly rack I saw in a used parts bin. It seemed pretty sturdy, so I grabbed it. The seat is a Brooks B17. I've never been happier with an upgrade than when I ditched my old stock saddle for a Brooks. I used to get a sore butt after weeks of riding, and now I just don't. Using a leather saddle has some conditions though. It needs to be broken in, so the first megameter or so of riding it just feels like another hard seat, but after a while the pain just disappears. It also needs to be oiled up with a special proof hide. You have to protect it from the rain, and you can't flip your bicycle upside down anymore. But it's all worth it to not be in pain anymore. I also have a Cane Creek Thudbuster suspension seat post. It's mostly just for smoothing out the small bumps like when riding on gravel. My handlebar situation might look like a bit of a mess, but it's actually pretty simple. I was tired of touring on drop bars. My neck and back sometimes got sore after a long day hunched over, and the hand positions offered never seemed to provide relief. Jones bars seemed to be recommended a lot by long-distance tourers, so I decided to give them a try. I like being able to sit up, but I also missed some of the more aero positions when facing a headwind or going down a hill. So I found a set of used aero bars in a used parts bin and slapped them on. I actually love them. On pavement, I tend to use them about half the time. They let me take the weight off my wrists and free up my hands to do other things. The brake levers are just some random levers I found, and for the shifters, I decided to go with thumb shifters. I used to tour with integrated STI shifters on my drop bars, but one day one of them broke while I was in Albania, and I realized I had no idea how they worked internally and could never fix it on my own. So I gave up integrated shifters and switched to bar end shifters. Now with flat bars, I found a pair of thumb shifters and they're my favorite so far. I guess I should talk about my kickstand. On previous bikes, I had always eschewed kickstands. I thought of them as kids' bikes accessories, not really meant for the weight distribution of loaded touring bikes. But as I was finishing up this bike, I discovered double kickstands that are meant for much heavier bikes. I ended up ordering the heaviest dutiest one of all, the Ursus Jumbo 80, designed for e-bikes and heavy touring bikes like mine. I didn't know what I was missing. I was able to just stand my bike up anywhere. No more leaning it against things or on the ground when I dismounted. But after installing it, I noticed that in the closed position, there's very little space between the legs and my extra wide tires. It fit, but just barely. Unfortunately, the single bolt mounting system meant that after deploying and folding it up again, the stand would often rotate slightly, causing the leg to rub against the tire. I tried tightening it down as hard as possible, but it would still rotate. I got in the habit of just giving the non-rubbing side a swift kick before setting off to rotate it back away from the tire, which worked for a time. Well, it turns out that repeatedly kicking your components isn't a great idea for long-term durability, even if it is called a kickstand. After about a month, some teeth broke off the internal mechanism that allows them to fold out and in together. Now one of the legs doesn't fold up anymore, and I have to keep it tied up with a rope to keep it from dragging on the ground. I'm already looking into ordering a new, different kickstand, hopefully one that won't have an issue with my wider tires. So there you have it. That's my touring bike. It's not perfect, but it's mine, and it's completely unique. You know, some people ask me sometimes, oh, what kind of bike are you using? And I'm not really sure what to say. It's sort of a mountain touring bike or a touring mountain bike. Is it a Rodriguez frame bike, custom bike? Or is it a completely new Alex van Gelder bike? Right now, I just call it my bike. Thanks for watching. If you have any more questions, feel free to post them in the comments below and I'll get to them as soon as I can.